and Jeff Pegues is in Baltimore along with the Reverend Jamal Bryant. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. Jeff, let me start with you. What's the latest?
Well, we're at a corner where over the last couple of days, at least, police have been in riot gear. We're not seeing that today, so that is a sign of improvement. However, Baltimore is not back to normal. There are a lot of people looking forward to what may happen tomorrow, and the reason for that is there are a couple of investigations at least. The Baltimore City Police Department is conducting its own investigation of what happened to Freddie Gray. They are expected to turn over the results of their investigation to the state's attorney's office tomorrow. Both agencies are conducting separate investigations, and it's still not clear when the results of those investigations will be made public. Members of the public, though, after the Baltimore City Police Department gave tomorrow as the date for releasing the results, the expectation was that something would be made public tomorrow. It sounds like that is not going to happen right now.
Reverend Bryant, you've been very vocal in these last few days that we need change in regards to police brutality and accountability. I read that you said that our youth, they see a black president, but they only see white justice. Give me a concrete example of what you want the president to do.
The president really needs to make the priority of our new attorney general, who was just confirmed just the other day, Loretta Lynch, that this is, in fact, a clean sweep of the penal justice system in America. There are right now 860,000 black men who are incarcerated, which would make them somewhere in the orbit of a little over 60% of the prison population, when we're just 15% of the U.S. population. It's a grave inequity. Last week in North Charleston, when Walter Scott was killed unnecessarily, it is the very first time in the 21st century that a white officer has, in fact, been held for killing a black person. Nobody is ignoring that, and as a consequence, this has really been a tinderbox of explosive frustration for so many people, not just in Baltimore, but across the country, who feel as if justice is being denied.
And Jeff, weigh in on that a little bit. You were a local reporter in Boston a few years ago. You've been in the neighborhoods. You're talking to community leaders. What do they want to see done now as they move forward?
Well, I think having covered this city for 3 years, 2000 to 2003, and coming back over the years and talking to people this week, they want answers. They want to know what happened to Freddie Gray. I think that's pretty clear. But there is tension in the community between police and members of this community who feel like the relationship with police isn't where it should be. That's an understatement. But that there is that tension there. And so there are a lot of people who want to see answers in terms of what happened to Freddie Gray, but also going forward, what happens next in terms of the relationship with police and the community.
Reverend Bryant, to that point, to Jeff's point there, I want to ask you about Toya Graham. That's the mom who some people are calling the mother of the year because, as you've now seen in that very famous video, she spanked her child in front of television cameras, and she said the reason she did that was because she didn't want him to end up like Freddie Gray, meaning that she knew that by throwing a rock at a police officer, which is assault with a deadly weapon, that officer might hurt her son, and she didn't want that to happen. There are others that are saying, what kind of sad state of affairs are we in right now where a mother has to beat her child so that he is not killed by a police officer? What is your take on Ms. Graham?
One, I'm very proud of her. She's a member of my church, as it would be. And I think that more parents need to take authority over your children. An incredible, crystal clear example of a mother getting involved. But the other thing that I want to point out is that while so many are lauding her as a hero, they're ignoring the fact that she's raising these 4 children and is unemployed. And while unemployed, is doing everything she can to try to provide a safe haven for her children and her family. There is an economic grave disparity in this city that's going to have to be addressed and be addressed immediately. It's much larger now than Freddie Gray or these 4 officers, but we've got to have some business and some enterprise to be developed in this area.
Jeff
If I
Pegues.
could just
Yes, please, Jeff.
ask you about that. You talked about the economic disparity, but this is something that has been talked about in Baltimore for decades now.
Yes.
Why haven't there been more changes?
It has been really ignored. The Band-Aid has been pulled off. If you walk through this community, there's got to be some level of economic enterprise outside of a liquor store, fried chicken, and a funeral home. CVS is the only corporation that's in immediate grasp to this neighborhood. So the banks who are here have got to answer the small business loans. People were upset yesterday. We've upset tourism and the Orioles game. The reality is the funds that have come to Baltimore for tourism, conventions, and the Orioles have not met this community. And so there's got to be a readjustment to how it is that funds are applied. All of the development can't be the Inner Harbor and Johns Hopkins and to the neglect of those who help make Baltimore beat.
But there are those who would say, if you look at you mentioned the CVS, and the
Yes.
CVS is right here
Yes.
to our left. The CVS was burned down, essentially.
Yes.
It was burned out on Monday. And so when you're talking about bringing investment, and then you show that, well, this is what happens when you bring investment here, how do you appeal to these businesses to come here if this is what they see and if this is what happens?
I think that's a cop-out because simply we've not had any uprising since 1968 when Dr. King was assassinated. So from 1968 to 2015, why was nothing done? And since 1968 to 2015, in this last General Assembly, the governor reduced the funding for public education and increased the funding for prisons. You're saying that that's because of this? No, the assembly is closed and nothing has happened. And so these are people who are frustrated legitimately because no jobs are being offered, no opportunities are offered, but prison doors are always open. There's a grave disconnect in that.
Fascinating discussion. We would love to continue talking to both of you. We got to move on, but Jeff Pegues in Baltimore and Reverend Jamal Bryant, thank you both very, very much.